morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 22nd July, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Japan's markets reacted strongly to a trade agreement announced by U.S. President Donald Trump. The deal set tariffs at 15% on imported goods from Japan, a reduction from the initially threatened 25%, causing stocks to jump over 3% and the Nikkei to reach a one-year peak. Shares of Japanese automakers like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan surged after reports of lowered U.S. auto tariffs, as the market viewed the 15% tariff rate favorably. However, Japan's 40-year government bond auction saw its weakest demand since 2011, raising concerns about government spending. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba denied reports of his potential resignation in August, following the trade deal and his coalition's loss of its majority in the upper house. Experts suggest that Japan might be in a weaker position in future trade talks, and advisory firm Quantum Strategy anticipates a hardline stance from the U.S. domestically, a fringe far-right populist party advocating Japanese first gained ground in Japan's upper house election. Japan is also poised for a surge in power, trading with the conclusion of a key deal, and has initiated an anti-dumping probe into stainless steel sheets from China and Taiwan. Furthermore, the UK and Japan are collaborating on a roadmap for achieving net zero emissions. India's stock market showed resilience amidst FPI selling, with the Sensex and Nifty benchmarks experiencing a marginal loss of just over 1% despite foreign portfolio investors selling off €6,000 crore worth of Indian stocks this month. Nifty 50 ultimately closed lower by 0.1% on two occasions. Air India's inspections of Boeing fuel switches found no issues. BSE shares rose 3%, following Jane Street's trading clearance. OctaFX India paid $37,000 to settle trading norm violations. Zenzar Technologies will establish a unit in Serbia, and the National Securities Depository Limited (NSDL) is going public. Analysts, including Sagadoshi, recommend Balkrishna Industries, Hindalco, and Eminent shares, projecting a 10-12% upside. Investment strategies focusing on long-term wealth building, tax savings, and AI-driven growth are being widely discussed. The potential of India's tech stocks for growth in 2025 is also highlighted. However, trade relations with the U.S. remain uncertain due to tariff pressures. The United States is actively engaged in trade negotiations with Japan, China, Taiwan, and the Philippines. A recently concluded trade deal with Japan has already boosted market sentiment and lifted Asian and European stocks. Further trade talks with China are scheduled to take place in Stockholm. The U.S. is also pursuing a trade agreement with Taiwan in a new round of discussions. Tariff concerns continue to loom over global markets, impacting countries like Sri Lanka and influencing the performance of Gulf bourses. Our stocks experienced mixed performance, with the S&P 500 reaching a record high before declining due to disappointing earnings reports and tariff uncertainties. Citigroup is exploring stablecoins for faster payments, contingent on regulatory clarity. Silicon Valley startup Anthropic is urging Washington to reduce red tape hindering power infrastructure development, citing concerns that the U.S. is falling behind China in energy generation. Coca-Cola will introduce cane sugar soda to the U.S. market following positive earnings reports. AstraZeneca plans a £37 billion investment in the U.S. amid ongoing tariff threat. Advent-backed NIC raised $1.05 billion in a U.S. IPO. Helix has been subpoenaed by a U.S. regulator regarding cancer therapy. A U.S. senator issued a warning to India and other nations over Russian oil imports. U.S. immigration agents in Miami arrested Pierre Reginald Boulos, a businessman, doctor, and former Haitian presidential hopeful, for allegedly supporting violent gangs in Haiti. In Japan, the successful completion of a trade deal with the United States has led to positive market reactions, with the Nikkei stock index reaching a one-year high. Japan is tied with South Korea for second place on the Henley Passport Index for 2025, following Singapore. China is preparing for further trade talks with the United States in Stockholm. Hong Kong stocks continued their rally, reaching a 3.5-year high, following the U.S.-Japan trade deal and anticipation of new trade talks with China. Meanwhile, Australian shares are on the rise, driven by gains in the mining and energy sectors, with Woodside Energy experiencing a surge in revenue. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, maintains a cautious stance on interest rates. PointsBet has rejected Better Entertainment's offer, favoring Mixie's cash bid. Australia has announced a stronger 2035 climate target. Singapore holds the top position in the Henley Passport Index for 2025. South Korea is tied with Japan for second place on the Henley Passport Index for 2025. Kalmar Korea has launched full operation of its second dust factory, establishing a tariff safe zone for K-beauty in America. Turning to India, stock markets opened with gains due to optimism surrounding the U.S.-Japan trade deal, with Tata Motors, M&M, and Maruti seeing gains. However, a U.S. senator issued a warning to India and other nations over Russian oil import. In Haiti, Pierre Reginald Boulos, a businessman, doctor, and former Haitian presidential hopeful, was arrested in Miami by U.S. immigration agents for allegedly supporting violent gangs in Haiti. Finally, a Virgin Australia flight experienced a fire in an overhead bin, believed to be caused by a power bank battery, leading to tightened rules regarding portable batteries on airlines. China's economy is seeing both growth and challenges, with a $167 billion Tibetan megadam project expected to boost hydro equipment and materials companies like Dongfeng Electric and Tibet Tianlu, contributing to an 8-month high for Chinese stock. Despite U.S. trade restrictions, Hawaii is becoming a strong AI competitor. However, 22% of affluent Chinese expressed economic pessimism in May, according to Oliver Wyman. Tesla plans to introduce a 6-seat Model Y in China amidst EV competition. Luxury brands are opening coffee shops in major cities to attract customers amidst a slowdown in luxury spending. Jiangsu's GDP is approaching that of Guangdong, with the gap narrowing to 175.76 billion yuan in the first half of 2025. A Chinese company has converted a cargo ship into a fish farm capable of producing 2,800 tons of fish annually to enhance food security. Outstanding property loans in China rose to a 2-year high in June, reaching 53.3 trillion yuan. However, China's June solar installations experienced a sharp decline due to new regulation. China's microdrama market has surpassed the country's box office revenue in 2024. The star market is experiencing a surge of hard technologies as it marks its 6th anniversary, with 34 mainland China biotechs filing for Hong Kong IPO in 2025. China is urging leaders to resolve disputes and reach a trade deal at the China-EU summit, addressing electric vehicles and rare earth exports amidst U.S. pressure. The United States is grappling with its own economic and security concerns, as President Trump aims to revitalize U.S. shipbuilding to counter China's dominance, necessitating a rebuild of the industry. Wall Street is optimistic about tech megacaps, but concerns persist regarding AI spending, China, and potential tariffs under a Trump administration. Microsoft reports that Chinese hacking groups have been exploiting a SharePoint vulnerability in attacks for weeks. A report indicates that Trump's strategy of targeting trade loopholes could risk 70% of China's exports to the US. Turning to Europe, Chinese businesses are urging leaders to resolve disputes and reach a trade deal at the China-EU summit, addressing electric vehicles and rare earth exports amidst US pressure. Indonesia is seeing a shift in trade dynamics as China reduces its imports of low-grade coal from the country. Finally, South Korea is set to welcome WHAM as the company accelerates its global expansion into the region. Saudi Arabia is aggressively diversifying its economy through strategic investments and partnerships. The kingdom's Public Investment Fund, PIF, is pursuing a stake in Olam Agri and has committed $4 billion to Syrian reconstruction, which includes a new business travel channel and plans for a Saudi-Syrian investment forum in Damascus to stimulate further investment. However, the PIF has reportedly blacklisted PwC. Domestically, Saudi Arabia's venture capital deployment reached $860 in the first half of 2025, surpassing the total for all of 2024. Al-Futtaim is providing a $666 million financial boost to Saudi retailer Sanomi, while concerns regarding future debt levels are emerging. The Saudi main index closed at 10,843, with the Tadawul all-share experiencing a 1.26% decline. Real estate developer Dar Al-Mayad is preparing to list on the Saudi exchange, while Sports Club defied EPO concerns with first-day gains. Saudi Arabia's crude exports saw a 3-month high in May. Apple has launched its online store in Saudi Arabia, with plans to open flagship stores by 2026. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia has extended $32 million in loans to Bosnia to support education and innovation initiatives. The ambitious $500 billion. The line development is facing increasing scrutiny. There are emerging questions about the potential end of the Saudi-US petrodollar agreement and its implications for de-dollarization. Russia has enacted a law criminalizing online searches for information considered extremist. Kyrgyz's banks, facing pressure from US sanctions, are increasing restrictions on transactions involving Russia. Sberbank is now providing custody services for Russian cryptocurrency assets. The Russian stock market, MOEX, issued updates on the MOEX index and share prices across sectors on July 22, 2025, including financials, metallurgy, oil and gas, retail, chemicals, and development. Concerns are arising about the potential decline of Russian banks, although the severity of this decline is debated. Despite this, Russia's energy strategy continues to be effective, attracting attention from Western analysts. Russia is hoping Europe will consider what it views as a more reasonable approach to dialogue, similar to that of former President Trump. The president of Mozambique is scheduled to visit Russia soon. Reports indicate that Russian drones are launching nightly attacks on Ukraine. In Kramatorsk, a Russian bombing of an apartment building resulted in the death of a 9-year-old boy. Europe's stock markets presented a mixed performance, characterized by volatility. An initial rally, spurred by the US-Japan trade agreement, quickly faded. Disappointing corporate results and trade anxieties contributed to the decline. Investors worried about potential US countermeasures and ongoing EU trade discussion. Oil majors and UBS also influenced market dynamics. Ryanair, however, reported a substantial 128% profit increase. Concerns surfaced regarding loopholes in EU sanctions against Russia, highlighting potential oil threats from the US. Adding to this, Dutch semiconductor company ASME saw its stock fall by 9% because of uneven order intake. Japan's Nikkei 225 index led a significant Asian market rally, climbing over 3% after Japan and the United States reached a trade agreement to resolve tariffs initially imposed by then-President Donald Trump. The United States, in conjunction with Japan, forged a trade agreement addressing tariffs levied during the Trump administration. This agreement served as a catalyst for a surge in Asian markets. Across Asian markets, a broad rally unfolded, propelled by the trade accord between Japan and the United States, with Japan's Nikkei 225 index taking the lead. Analysts further noted that select Asian stocks are potentially undervalued, trading at discounts as high as 45.7%. Germany's far right is reportedly studying tactics to instigate a MAGA-like societal split. Parallel to this, German automotive manufacturers stand to gain from the trade agreement between the US and Japan. City economist Katsuhiko Aiba predicts this US-Japan deal could reshape trade discussions with significant auto-exporting regions, including the EU and South Korea. This could trigger a surge in value for German automotive enterprises. Deutsche Bank estimates the leading 10 German firms could collectively see a 20% upswing. Singapore is currently experiencing a 4-year low in inflation, registering below the anticipated 0.9% before the upcoming monetary policy decision in July. This coincides with a significant expansion of Singapore's foreign exchange market, which has doubled in size over the past 4 years. The average daily turnover in April reached $1.27 trillion, surpassing that of Hong Kong. Core inflation in Singapore is maintaining the same rate of increase as the previous month. South Africa saw President Cyril Ramaphosa dismiss the education minister. The country also achieved a consensus at the G20 amidst global economic concerns. The South African rand saw a slight increase after coalition support for the budget bill was indicated. The South African stock index exceeded 100,000, showing positive market confidence. One South African telecommunications firm has consistently paid dividends since its IPO. Stellantis intends to launch Leapmotor in South Africa this year. A report suggests industrial vending could boost productivity, with millions of USD in growth projected from 2021 to 2030. South Africa ranked 4th best globally, influenced by developments in Johannesburg. Furthermore, a retail giant in South Africa is expected to grow significantly. Gauteng is bracing for a severe cold front with heavy rain. Indonesia is set to face a 19% tariff on its goods entering the U.S. market. This figure is part of a new trade framework proposed by the Trump administration. The proposed tariff marks a decrease from the originally considered 32% under earlier Trump administration proposals. This rate aligns with existing trade agreements between the U.S. and other Southeast Asian countries. United Kingdom equities presented a mixed landscape as investors carefully weighed corporate earnings reports and anticipated crucial economic data releases, even as the FTSE 100 managed to sidestep a significant stock sell-off and UK bonds demonstrated resilience. Simultaneously, the UK government is actively pursuing a reduction in stock market regulations, aligning with the Chancellor's broader strategy to stimulate economic growth. However, London's IPO fundraising has experienced a notable downturn, potentially hindering the UK's aspirations in the financial sector, even as business lender Shawbrook moves forward with plans for a £2 billion UK listing. Amidst these developments, IBM announced a reduction of its UK workforce by almost 400 positions, attributing the decision to diminished profit. Italy's highest court has cleared the way for a climate lawsuit against Eni and its government shareholders to move forward. In other news, Italy is reportedly reinstating most of its initial stipulations regarding UniCredit's offer for BPM, signaling a possible change in the regulation of the banking industry. Canada's stock market saw a slight increase as the S&P TAIEX composite closed up 0.17%. The Motley Fool Canada pointed out notable stocks for investors on Tuesday, July 22nd, while also mentioning a REIT that experienced a 15.5% decline, marking it as their preferred real estate investment. Philippines will maintain a 19% tariff in a new trade deal announced by President Trump. Furthermore, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth met with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the Pentagon to discuss mutual interests. United States will receive a $50 investment from AstraZeneca. Kevin Hassett and Pascal Soriot attended the announcement. This investment comes as President Trump continues to threaten tariffs, and the pharmaceutical industry aims to preserve positive relationships. A new $250 visa integrity fee is being imposed on international flight arrivals at Kennedy Airport, affecting visitors from Mexico, India, Brazil, and China. Bangladesh has declared a day of mourning following the crash of a military jet into a school in Dhaka, which killed nearly all of the 31 victims, primarily children. Rian, a 14-year-old, was among those injured in the tragic incident. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar has revealed a plan designed to tackle the increasing living costs faced by Malaysian citizens, though specific details of the plan were not disclosed. Saudi Arabia's Aqua Power has entered into an agreement with Senegal to construct a desalination plant. Separately, a Kenyan citizen who was on death row in Saudi Arabia has been freed. Qatar is now competing with both Saudi Arabia and India to host the Doha 2036 Olympics. Senegal is partnering with Saudi Arabia's Aqua Power for the construction of a desalination plant, marking a significant step in addressing water scarcity. Qatar has officially launched its bid to host the Doha 2036 Olympics, placing it in competition with Saudi Arabia and India for the prestigious event. Greece is responding to a worsening drought by planning to merge hundreds of water companies. The goal is to enhance water management and improve the allocation of resources. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.